Two men are behind bars following the fatal shooting of a 30-year-old man at a nightclub. At just before 2 AM on Saturday the 9th of September, off-duty police officers were working security at the park on Calder at 2325 Calder Avenue in Beaumont, Texas, when they heard shots fired in the alley on the east side of the club. Authorities said a large crowd was gathered at the club when the shooting happened. The officers at the club called for backup and found 30-year-old Leroy Smith of Beaumont deceased in the alley from multiple gunshot wounds. Witnesses spotted possible suspects that left the area in a black vehicle. Police spotted a black vehicle about 7 blocks west of the club near Calder Avenue and Interstate 10, but they tried to perform a traffic stop, but the vehicle picked up speed and kept going. After a brief pursuit, the driver, 39-year-old Horace Peterson of Houston, pulled into a parking lot, where a passenger jumped out and fled on foot. Officers gave chase and caught the passenger, identified as 21-year-old Augusta Smith Jr. of Houston, and found evidence that linked him to the shooting. Both men were arrested and taken into the police station for questioning. Augusta is charged with murder and is held at the Jefferson County Jail on a $995,000 bond. Horace was charged with evading in a motor vehicle with a previous conviction, and he's held at the Jefferson County Jail on a $50,000 bond. The motive of the shooting is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. Fourth grade teacher 38-year-old Alyssa McCommon is behind bars for raping a 12-year-old boy. Alyssa taught English language arts and social studies at Charter Academy in Covington, Tennessee. Authorities said that Alyssa, a mother of 2, befriended several juveniles at the school, beginning with video games and social media apps, leading to her sending inappropriate photos and requesting sexual relations with the victims. On the morning of the 24th of August, police launched an investigation after a parent raised allegations of misconduct by the teacher. Alyssa was immediately suspended without pay by Tipton County Schools. Investigators said that Alyssa admitted to communicating inappropriately with former students, and there was no indication that there was activity that took place on the school campus. The incident with the 12-year-old reportedly took place at Alyssa's home. On the morning of the 8th of September, Alyssa was arrested and charged with rape of a child. She's held at the Tipton County Jail on a $25,000 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. 40-year-old Eric Adrian Blanco is behind bars after fatally beating his girlfriend's 14-month-old daughter Rivelyn Van Norman in July. At 9:23 PM on Thursday the 6th of July, authorities responded to a home in the 400 block of 3rd Street Northeast in Little Falls, Minnesota after Rivelyn's mother Raylan Scrotch called 911 to report her daughter was choking on vomit and was not breathing. When officers arrived on scene, they found an unresponsive infant with marks on her face and neck. They performed life-saving measures on the girl until medics arrived and rushed the baby to St. Gabriel's Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. An autopsy revealed the infant suffered significant blunt head trauma, including skull fractures. She had scrapes to her neck, chest, abdomen and inside her lower lip consistent with pressure on her face and asphyxia injury. Bruises were found behind her ears and on her face. Authorities said there was nothing to suggest that the majority of the injuries were several days old and were more consistent with the acute injury within minutes to hours. It was determined that the baby died due to multiple head and neck injuries consistent with homicidal violence. Investigators said the baby and the mother had been temporarily staying with Eric, who police identified as the mother's boyfriend, for about a week. Raylan told investigators that prior to calling 911, she left her daughter in Eric's care while she made a brief trip to the liquor store. She said that when she returned, she found Rivelyn not breathing while Eric was trying to resuscitate her. Authorities said that when officers first arrived at Eric's home, Raylan was hysterical, screaming her daughter's name, whereas Eric was seen praying occasionally, but was otherwise unemotional. In an interview with detectives, Eric was unable to provide an explanation for the homicidal injuries that caused Rivelyn's death. Following an extensive investigation, on Wednesday the 6th of September, police arrested Eric and charged him with second-degree intentional murder. He's held at the Morrison County Jail on a $1 million bond. Eric has a criminal history which includes felony domestic assault in 2017, theft of a firearm or property valued at over $35,000 in 2016, receiving stolen property in 2014, assault with a dangerous weapon in 2014, disorderly conduct and obstruction in 2006, and assault causing great bodily harm in 2001 after beating a 1-year-old who suffered a skull fracture. If convicted, Eric faces up to 40 years in prison. A 34-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting a 25-year-old woman. During the early morning hours of Thursday the 7th of September, authorities responded to the 2000 block of Wheaton Avenue in Millville, New Jersey on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found Chanel Stewart of Vineland deceased in the vehicle with a gunshot wound to her head. Authorities identified Alex Blocker of Bridgeton as the suspect. He was arrested later that day and charged with first-degree murder and 2 second-degree weapons possession charges. Authorities said surveillance footage recovered by investigators showed a vehicle resembling Alex's following Chanel in close proximity just minutes before the shooting. In addition, police said Alex lied about where he was when Chanel was killed. Investigators said that Alex told him he was not where he was during the time of the incident. Alex remains at the Cumberland County Jail without bond. The motive on how Alex and the victim may have known each other is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. A 42-year-old mother is behind bars and is charged with felony child neglect. Authorities said that Kelly McGriff Williams refused to allow a 9-year-old daughter to leave their home at 12725 Southwest 95th Court in Miami, Florida since 2017 and was confined to her bedroom most of that time. Kelly did not enroll her in school and never provided her with an education, and the girl was unable to read and write. Kelly declined to take her daughter to a doctor even when she was very ill. The girl would have to beg to eat, and Kelly would not always provide food for her. An officer responded to the home after the Florida Department of Children and Families investigated the allegations. On the 26th of August, Kelly was involuntarily admitted to the Jackson South Hospital under the Baker Act due to her altered mental state, and the child was taken into police custody. On the 30th of August, police interviewed the victim at her father's residence, and she confirmed the allegations. The victim's father also confirmed the allegations and said he's been trying to get legal custody of his daughter for the past 5 years. The Miami Child Protective Team concluded that the child suffered instances of child neglect, medical neglect, mental injury and educational neglect. Kelly was arrested on the 1st of September and she was being discharged from hospital. She's at the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Centre on child neglect charges, where she's held on a $5,000 bond. Police are investigating after a 25-year-old woman was fatally shot in her car. At just before 11 p.m. on Thursday, the 7th of September, authorities responded to the area of Fleming and Falk Avenues in the Brighton Heights neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, after receiving a shot spotter alert for 12 rounds fired. When first responders arrived, they found a woman in a critical condition after being shot multiple times while sitting in the driver's seat of a vehicle. Medics transported her to a local hospital, where she succumbed to her injuries at 11:30 p.m. The medical examiner identified the victim as 25-year-old Denasia Lighty. Investigators said that Denasia was in her car when a shooter approached her on foot and fired shots inside before fleeing the scene. No arrests have been made to date, and the motive of the attack is unclear as the investigation into the matter continues. A man is behind bars after repeatedly trading vapes with a minor in exchange for sex and nude photos. 21-year-old Taven Powell met with a 13-year-old girl in Bismarck, North Dakota on 4 occasions between the 1st of March and the 14th of July this year. On each occasion, Taven reportedly had sexual contact with the girl in exchange for vape products. Taven also used the social media app Snapchat to obtain nude photos of the girl. Authorities discovered Taven's identity after the girl's parents brought a phone to the Bismarck police in mid-July. A data extraction revealed messages on the app from a username police said they were able to positively identify as belonging to Taven. The girl told investigators that Taven knew that she was 13 because she told him, but she did not think he cared. She said that Taven told her he could provide her with vapes in exchange for sex acts and nude pictures. Taven then would send her explicit images of himself. On Wednesday the 6th of September, Taven was arrested at his workplace about 80 miles away in Beulah. He is charged with 4 counts of gross sexual imposition where a victim is younger than 15, patronising a minor for commercial sexual activity, contributing to the deprivation or delinquency of a minor, luring a minor by means of a computer or other electronic means, and indecent exposure. He is held at the Burley Morton Detention Centre on a $20,000 cash-only bond, on a condition he must have no contact with the victim. Police are investigating after a man was fatally shot. At 1:57 p.m. on Saturday the 9th of September, authorities responded to the Parkside Villas apartments at 212 Ramblewood Drive in Shelby, North Carolina on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they found an unresponsive man laying in the parking lot with multiple gunshot wounds. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The victim's been identified as 44-year-old Matthew Libby of Shelby. No arrests have been made to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. Police are investigating after a woman was believed to have been shot during an altercation. On the night of Thursday, the 7th of September, Authorities responded to a home at 521 Middle White Oak Road in Paytona, West Virginia on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the residence, they found the victim identified as Deborah Lynn Harless deceased with a gunshot wound. A suspect identified as Howard Kirk was detained at the scene, but no charges have currently been filed. No further details have been released as the investigation into the matter continues. A 33-year-old man is behind bars after beating and robbing a fast food restaurant manager. At around 10 AM on Monday the 4th of September, the suspect entered the Little Caesars Pizza at 1755 East Cardinal Drive in Beaumont, Texas through the back door. He then approached the manager and pointed a gun at him and demanded he get the money out of the safe. He then hit the manager in the head multiple times with a handgun and punched him in the mouth. Several minutes later, the suspect fled through the back door. On Wednesday the 6th of September, authorities identified Kevin Goeth as the suspect and issued a warrant for his arrest. On Thursday the 7th of September, Kevin was located and taken into custody. He's charged with aggravated robbery and is held at the Jefferson County Jail on a $200,000 bond. Police are investigating after a man was fatally shot. At 10:35 PM on Friday the 8th of September, 29-year-old Demetrius Owens attempted to enter an apartment at 9100 Walker Road in Shreveport, Louisiana, when he was shot by another man. Officers arrived at the Seasons apartment complex on reports of shots fired and found Demetrius in a critical condition, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds to his chest and torso. He was transported to the Oxnard LSU Health Shreveport for treatment, but was pronounced dead at 11:14 PM. Authorities said they identified Demetrius of Odessa, Louisiana through fingerprint analysis. Authorities have not said whose apartment Demetrius was trying to enter, or if Demetrius knew the man that shot him. No arrests have been made to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. Police are investigating after a 26-year-old man was fatally shot. At just after 1:30 AM on Friday the 8th of September, authorities responded to the El Rancho Escondido apartments at 2840 Las Vegas Trail in Fort Worth, Texas on reports of a shooting. When officers arrived, they found a deceased man with multiple gunshot wounds. The Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office identified the victim as Justin Michael Lewis, who lived at the apartment complex. Police said they believe the incident started as an argument involving two people against the victim, who was shot and died from his injuries. No arrests have been made to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. On Wednesday the 30th of August, a 36-year-old Lynchburg, Virginia man was arrested after travelling about 100 miles to Allegheny County with the purpose of having sex with a child under the age of 15. Lonnie Carrico is charged with 5 counts of use of communication system to facilitate certain offences against minors. Lonnie was apprehended by the Allegheny County Sheriff's Office with the assistance of Covington Police, the Allegheny County Emergency Response Team, the Department of Wildlife Resources, and the Virginia State Police. He's held at the Allegheny Regional Jail without bond. A 30-year-old man is behind bars for holding a woman hostage and threatening to kill her after they got into an argument over a McDonald's meal. On the night of Saturday the 9th of September, authorities received a text message from a woman who claimed that John Moore was holding her hostage at the Garrett Mills apartment complex in Grafton, West Virginia. Deputies responded to John's apartment and knocked on the door multiple times, but there was no answer. Deputies eventually pushed the door open and announced themselves as they walked in. As they entered, they saw a female victim walk out the door while John was directly behind her. The victim yelled and swore at John to get away from her, and deputies took John into custody. Officials spoke with the victim, who said that she and John got into a fight because John was supposed to bring her McDonald's back, but he refused because he claimed that she was being a selfish bitch and she didn't answer her phone. She said that John threatened her by telling her that she was going to choke her to death and watch her lay there. He also said that he was going to put her in the basement and starve her to death while he ate in front of her. She said that John held her by the neck with one hand and ripped her shirt. While restraining her by the neck, he held up a knife to her with his other hand and threatened to slit her throat. John is charged with kidnapping and domestic battery offences. He was booked into the Tygart Valley Regional Jail at 1:10 AM Sunday morning and is held without bail. The investigation into the matter continues. 47-year-old Brian Martin is behind bars after he raped an elderly woman inside an antique shop. At around 12:30 PM on Sunday the 10th of September, Authorities responded to Shabbatik's store at 831 Ronaldo Road Northwest in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, reports of an assault. Investigators were told that a man had entered the business shortly after it opened, threatened a 77-year-old employee with a hammer, and forced her to have intercourse inside the store before he fled the scene. Authorities were able to identify Brian as a suspect through witness accounts and surveillance footage obtained in the area. At 2:15 p.m, police located Brian on nearby Canal Drive, and he was taken into custody. Police said that the victim and the suspect were not known to each other, and that this was a random act of violence. Brian's charged with rape and kidnapping, and is held at the Forsyth County Jail on a $1 million bond. Brian has an extensive criminal history spanning more than 3 decades. On the 18th of August, Brian was released from the Piedmont Correctional Institution in Salisbury. He was given a 4-year prison sentence in 2018 for burning a public building in Stokes County. He was released in 2022, but ended up behind bars again in January this year after violating parole. Brian was just 16 years old at the time of his first conviction for felony assault with a deadly weapon and vehicle theft in Forsyth County in 1992. He's since had 4 convictions for assaulting a female and 1 for second-degree kidnapping. Brian has also had past convictions for assault with a deadly weapon, breaking and entering, and larceny. The investigation into the matter continues. Police are investigating after a 26-year-old man was fatally shot. At 1:07 p.m. on Monday the 11th of September, authorities responded to Burke Village Apartments complex along Burke Village Lane in Winston-Salem, North Carolina after receiving a shot spotter alert. When officers arrived, they found Javonte Darren Morrison in the parking lot suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Officers immediately rendered aid until paramedics arrived on scene, but he died shortly thereafter. Upon further investigation, it was determined that Javonte was in an argument outside the apartment complex with unknown individuals. As he walked back to his car after the argument, he was shot multiple times before the suspects fled the scene. Detectives believe the suspects and the victim knew each other. Authorities said there were multiple witnesses who refused to cooperate with officers. No arrests have been made to date, as the investigation into the matter continues. 43-year-old Richard Scott Dowsett is wanted by police after fatally shooting 41-year-old Brandy Joyce Hanks. At around 5:30 p.m. on Sunday the 10th of September, authorities responded to a distress call at 405 Browns Bend Road in Alexandria, Louisiana, a report of a person shot. When officers arrived, they found Brandy in a critical condition with a gunshot wound. She was transported to a local hospital, but died the following morning at 3:30 a.m. Authorities identified Richard as a suspect in the shooting and said that he and Brandy lived at the same address. Detectives obtained an arrest warrant for Richard for second-degree murder. Throughout the night, authorities scoured the area in search for Richard, eventually tracking down the vehicle used to flee the scene, and he remains on the run. The motive of the shooting is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. 72-year-old William Butler is behind bars for shooting 34-year-old Michael Boss. At 11:26 a.m. on Friday the 1st of September, authorities responded to Lions Park in Haley, Idaho, to conduct a welfare check after receiving a report that someone was screaming for help. When officers arrived, they found a man with a gunshot wound and transported him to hospital for treatment. A resident provided investigators with dashcam footage, which captured Williams' grey Toyota RAV4 leaving the scene just after the shooting. The next day, authorities located Williams' car at a grocery outlet in Haley and followed him home. Officials completed a search of Williams' residence and found a pistol with a silencer on it in an upstairs bedroom dresser drawer. In the same drawer was a small leather satchel containing several rounds of ammunition, and William was taken into custody. While questioned by detectives, William confessed to the shooting and said he became annoyed with Michael because every time that he and his wife walked past Michael in the park, he would always be sitting in his car talking on his cell phone. William said he'd been thinking about shooting Michael for weeks. He said he then drove to the park Friday morning and found Michael sitting in his vehicle and asked him if he had seen any moose. Michael looked up for a moment and then back down to his phone when William shot him once in the head above his left eye. The bullet travelled through his head and lodged itself in his right temple. Michael survived the shooting, however he said he lost his vision and will be blind for the rest of his life. Michael said that William's intention was for him to die, adding that anyone who is feeling that kind of way is a signal to seek help. William is charged with attempted murder and is held at the Blaine County Jail with bail yet to be set. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for the 19th of September. A 25-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting his 64-year-old mother. At around 2 p.m. on Monday the 4th of September, Authorities responded to a home at 29029 Glenwood Street in Inkster, Michigan after receiving a report of a suspicious circumstance. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found an unresponsive woman in a bedroom with multiple gunshot wounds. She was transported to a local hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Authorities said that Joshua Hill shot his mother during a verbal altercation and fled the scene in a Ford Escape. On the 6th of September, Michigan State Police located Joshua's car and announced that Joshua was likely travelling on foot in metropolitan Detroit while armed and dangerous. On Sunday the 10th of September, Joshua went into a Domino's pizza store at 535 Griswold Street in downtown Detroit and ordered a stuffy cheesy bread when a police officer on patrol recognised the wanted man from media reports and intel pictures. Joshua was arrested without incident and was found to be in possession of a gun. He's charged with first-degree premeditated murder and a firearm count. He's held at the Wayne County Jail with bond set at $1 million. The investigation into the matter continues. 41-year-old Alison Sarah Dougherty is behind bars after leaving a child alone in a running car while she went swimming in the ocean. At around 10:30 a.m. on Monday the 11th of September, authorities were alerted to Alison after she parked a car in Berkeley Pier in Florida, cranked up the radio volume and air conditioning, and jumped into the water, leaving the young boy still in diapers crawling around in the car unattended. Alison then jumped into the water at the pier where multiple people were fishing, while people warned her about the hooks and the possibility of sharks being in the water. Witnesses said that Alison shouted back that she didn't care and wanted to get hooked and would want to meet the sharks. She'd been in the water for about 20 minutes when deputies arrived, and she swam further from the shore when she saw them. A Boca Grande Marine unit brought her back to shore, and she was arrested. Staff at Captain Con's Fish House across the street from the pier said the woman and the boy had been at the restaurant several times in the past week, and that each time she was acting odd. Staff member Jenny Ray said she didn't seem drunk, she didn't seem intoxicated, something was just off. Jenny said they fed the little boy lunch after the woman's arrest, while waiting on a family member to pick him up. Alison's been charged with 1 count of child neglect, leaving a child unattended in a motor vehicle for an excess of 15 minutes. She remains held at the Lee County Jail on a $250 bond. Jail records indicate that she does not live at a fixed address. Police are investigating what is believed to be a murder-suicide. At around 7 a.m. on Monday the 11th of September, authorities responded to a home at 2100 Anthony Place Southwest in Albuquerque, New Mexico for a welfare check. When deputies arrived at the premises, they tried to make contact with people inside. After receiving no response, they entered the unlocked residence and found a man and woman in their 20s deceased with gunshot wounds. Preliminary findings suggest that 27-year-old Harvey Omanza fatally shot 21-year-old Hannah Mae Slavin before turning the gun on himself. Hannah's family, who are from Lebanon Junction, Kentucky, said that Hannah was on vacation in New Mexico when she was killed. No further details are provided on the case, as the investigation into the matter continues. A 22-year-old man is behind bars for fatally shooting an 18-year-old man. At around 10 p.m. on Sunday the 10th of September, authorities responded to a residence at 400 South Grant Street in Cabot, Arkansas, and reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they entered the premises and found Aaron Hall in a critical condition lying on the bedroom floor with a gunshot wound to his right side. Medics rushed him to the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences in Little Rock, where he later died. Authorities identified Brandon Huff as a suspect and issued a warrant for his arrest for first-degree murder, possession of firearms by certain persons, and discharging a firearm in the city. At 9 a.m. on Tuesday the 12th of September, Brandon turned himself in at the Cabot Police Station. Brandon is held at the Lonoke County Jail without bond. The motive of the attack is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. 32-year-old Amy Marie Kemper is behind bars after bringing her 11-year-old son to a hotel room where she drank, used narcotics and engaged in sex with 2 men, one of whom died in bed just feet away from where the child was sleeping. At 9:39 a.m. on Sunday the 10th of September, authorities responded to the Hammock Beach Golf Resort and Spa, located at 200 Ocean Crest Drive in Palm Coast, Florida, for a medical emergency call. Upon arriving at the scene, paramedics attempted life-saving measures on the 60-year-old unresponsive adult male, but despite their best efforts, the man was unable to be saved. Deputies spoke to Amy, who said she'd been staying in the hotel room with the deceased man and another 52-year-old man. Investigators said that Amy had her 11-year-old son with her at the scene. The cause of death was not immediately clear. Authorities said they found marijuana, Viagra pills, burnt blunts and cocaine inside the room. Numerous sex toys were located in the bathroom, and condom wrappers were located near the bed. In an interview with detectives, Amy said she met up with 5 men at a bar the previous night, where they stayed until about 2 a.m, before picking her son up from his grandmother's house and going back to the hotel room. They all drank, smoked, and did cocaine until 3 of the men left, so that she and the 2 remaining men could have group sex in the room. Amy said that before engaging in the threesome, they attempted to put the couch her son was sleeping on into a closet and covered up the door with a sheet so he wouldn't hear or see the sexual activities occurring. Sometime after their sexual activities ceased, Amy said she heard what sounded like the 60-year-old man having a medical episode, but the noises soon stopped and they decided he was sleeping. Amy and the 52-year-old man then left the room at around 5 a.m. and were gone for hours, leaving her son behind. When they returned at around 9:25 a.m, they found the 60-year-old man unresponsive and cold in bed, which is when they called 911. Flagler County Sheriff Rick Staley said that Amy thought it would be okay to bring a child to the resort in the middle of the night so she could engage in narcotic use and sexual activities, and leaving her son in the room with the deceased man for several hours until she came back. Department of Children and Families responded to the scene and took the 11-year-old child into custody. It's unclear where the child's father is. Amy was arrested and charged with 1 count of child neglect without great bodily harm. She's held at the Flagler County Jail on a $15,000 bond, with the condition that she has no contact with her son. The investigation into the matter continues. 24-year-old Targi Alexandra is behind bars for abandoning her 3-year-old daughter. At around 2:50 a.m. on Tuesday the 12th of September, a passerby found a young girl sitting in an unattended stroller in front of a Bank of America along the 100 block of North Larchmont Boulevard and Larchmont Village neighborhood of Los Angeles, California, and alerted the authorities. When officers arrived, they were unable to locate the child's parents but discovered Targi's ID stuffed inside the stroller. The child was taken to hospital for evaluation and was considered to be in good health. The child was reunited with her father, but Targi remained missing. On Wednesday the 13th of September, officers located Targi at a workplace and she was arrested. She's charged with felony child endangerment and is held on a $105,000 bond. Police are searching for 2 suspects in connection to the fatal shooting of a man in an apparent gang-related attack. At 2:50 a.m. on Sunday the 10th of September, authorities responded to a mobile gas station at 1465 South Main Street in Santa Ana, California on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived, they located an unresponsive man in a vehicle with a gunshot wound to his upper torso. The victim, who was identified as 31-year-old Angel Fragoso, was pronounced dead at the scene. A woman who was with Angel told investigators that they drove to the gas station, and when they got out to switch places, a gunman and another suspect approached them and asked them what gang they were from. Angel was then shot in the upper torso. No arrests have been made to date, and police continue to search for the suspects as the investigation into the matter continues. 22-year-old Darian Helmantola is behind bars in connection to the death of a 12-day-old infant son. At just before 9 a.m. on Tuesday the 12th of September, authorities responded to an apartment in the 200 block of Chess Street in Monongahela, Pennsylvania after Darian called 911 to report that a child wasn't breathing. A 911 dispatcher center relayed that the caller was not communicating with dispatchers and was refusing to perform CPR on the child. When authorities arrived, the baby boy was found unresponsive with blood coming from his nose and injuries to his face and neck. He also had a cut on his forehead, which Darian claimed to be from his long fingernails. Blood was seen on Darian's shirt, while investigators came across a bloody paper towel in the bathroom. They also found 2 alcoholic drinks on 2 separate tables on the front porch of the apartment. When asked if she drank both of them or if another person lived there, she said she lives alone. Darian said that she'd been sleeping in bed with her son and woke up at around 4 a.m. to feed him before going back to bed. Darian was said to have been hysterical while speaking to officers and stayed inside the apartment while medics tended to the child. While talking to police, she indicated that if her baby was dead, then she wanted to go to jail, otherwise she would kill herself. The baby was transported to a local hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Doctors reported seeing blue-greyish colouring on the front of the neck and around the mouth of the child. During an interview, Darian told investigators that she may have rolled over and onto the baby while she slept. Darian was arrested the same day and charged with criminal homicide, aggravated assault, child endangerment and reckless endangerment. She's held at the Washington County Jail without bond. A preliminary hearing is scheduled for the 20th of September. The investigation into the matter continues. 49-year-old Abra McDonald is behind bars for leaving her 67-year-old mother, Karen McDonald, on the floor for several weeks and refusing to call for help when she fell. On the 8th of September, Abra was indicted for knowingly abusing or neglecting an adult in connection with her mother's fall and subsequent death in June. On the 27th of June, authorities responded to Karen's home in Somerset, Kentucky, and transported her to hospital after learning she had been in the same spot on the floor where she had fallen several weeks prior. Karen died the next day due to physical trauma she sustained. Investigators learned that Karen lived with her daughter Abra, and that Abra made no attempts for several weeks to contact someone to assist her mother in getting up from the floor, despite having a cellular phone service and neighbours nearby. The house also didn't have any running water. Authorities said that sepsis and other causes of neglect led to Karen's death. Lieutenant Matt Bryant of the Pulaski County Sheriff's Office said she did supply her with some foods, things like that, but living on the floor was the most detrimental to her health. Abra is held at the Pulaski County Jail on a $250,000 bond. The investigation into the matter continues. On Thursday, the 7th of September 2023, 18-year-old Mason Sisk was sentenced to life in prison without parole for killing his entire family in 2019. On the 27th of April 2023, Mason was convicted of multiple counts of capital murder for the shooting deaths of his father, 38-year-old John Sisk, his stepmother, 35-year-old Mary Sisk, and his younger sibling, 6-year-old Grayson, 4-year-old Aurora, and 6-month-old Colson. At around 11 p.m. on the 2nd of September 2019, authorities were called to the residence along the 25,000 block of Ridge Road in Elkmont, Alabama, and spoke with Mason in the driveway. He said he'd been in the basement playing video games when he heard gunshots from the main level of the home upstairs. He told deputies he ran upstairs and heard footsteps, then went out the door to see a vehicle pulling away. Inside the residence, deputies found each victim had been shot in the head while laying in bed. Mary, Aurora and Colson were found dead on scene. John and Grayson were taken to hospital, where they later succumbed to their injuries. While deputies continued talking to Mason, deputies noticed discrepancies in Mason's statements, so they took him to the station where he confessed to killing his family. Mason showed deputies where he threw the handgun after the shooting, which was found on the side of the road near the residence. Authorities said that the firearm was in the home illegally. Authorities added that the family had returned home from a holiday weekend trip to the beach, and Mason stole a gun from the family's host. Mason avoided the death penalty as he was only 14 years old when he committed the murders, but will instead remain behind bars for the rest of his life. Two Coleman County Sheriff Office employees are dead from an apparent murder-suicide. At around 2:45 a.m. on Thursday the 7th of September, authorities responded to the Seaside Beach and Racquet Club at 24522 Perdido Beach Boulevard in Orange Beach, Florida, after receiving a 911 call about a shooting in the common area of the condo. When officers arrived on scene, they located a deceased man and a woman lying in a pool of blood. Investigators said that 28-year-old Deputy Kenneth Booth Jr. fatally shot his dispatcher girlfriend, 23-year-old Lexi White, when an argument escalated. He then turned the gun on himself. Sheriff Matt Gentry said our hearts go out to the families of all those involved. Lexi has been part of the sheriff office since she was 16. I'm literally heartbroken. I feel like Lexi is one of my own kids, he said. On Monday the 4th of September, 32-year-old Troy McAfee was arrested for keeping his 7-month-old baby girl in the same hotel room as her dead mother's body and not reporting her death. Police said they found his girlfriend, 34-year-old Jerry Mays, unresponsive on the bed when they conducted a welfare check on her on the 2nd of August at room 153 at Days Inn and Suites on Lebanon Road in Sharonville, Ohio. When officers first arrived, they said Troy looked surprised to see them. They asked to speak with Jerry, and Troy told them that's what we just called for. Jerry was unresponsive on one of the two beds in the room, but he told police she just passed out, and then audibly laughed while saying it. She died from a suspected drug overdose. A 7-month-old girl was found wearing a sword onesie designed for a 3-month-old. She smelled of cigarette and marijuana smoke. The formula inside the bottle was curdled, and she had untreated diaper rash. Her hair was matted and unkempt as if she had not been bathed for quite some time. Authorities said that she was reluctant to straighten her legs, as if she had been kept in a car seat for exorbitant periods of time. The baby never attempted to crawl or roll over when on the floor, which is inconsistent with her age. First responders said that Jerry was found dead in full rigor mortis, with lividity present, indicating that she passed away several hours before police arrived. Troy claimed he found her only about an hour or two before police arrived, and waited like 10 minutes before trying to get help. He also said he tried to put her in a bath to try to bring her back and figure out what's wrong with her. He told police she has cancer and that she passed out and was cold and blue. In addition, he told police he didn't have a car and claimed to have called like 20 people despite earlier stating that his phone was dead. Police determined that Troy gave evasive and inconsistent statements. He also never explicitly stated that he called the police or ambulance. Police said that an anonymous caller wanted them to check on the infant. Officers said Troy was a suspected drug dealer and had been selling drugs, specifically crack cocaine, to a woman and a man who were in the hotel room and spent the night with him, Jerry and their daughter. They said that all parties had smoked crack cocaine last night, except for Troy who smoked marijuana with a child present. The couple privately admitted to police that they arrived at the hotel the night before and smoked crack, and so did Jerry. They said Jerry had been awake at 5 a.m. and the man heard Jerry and Troy arguing, and Jerry complained of her chest hurting. She refused an ambulance when she was asked if she needed one. The couple said that Troy woke them up about 15 minutes before police arrived. They said they didn't know that she was dead, but knew something was wrong because of the way that Troy was acting. The couple said that the welfare check may have come from someone in a nearby room because they were talking very loudly. The baby was checked out by paramedics, taken to the police department and eventually released into custody of child caseworkers at the Hamilton County Department of Job and Family Services. Police determined that the man and the woman in the room with Troy were wanted on warrants related to court orders or judgments. The Hamilton County Heroin Task Force said they found narcotics, suspected narcotics and drug paraphernalia in the room, including loose white powder, a piece of folded paper containing white powder, a white plastic baggie of white powder suspected to be heroin, and Xanax pills. Troy is charged with child endangering and failure to report a death. He was booked into the Hamilton County Jail at 1:10 p.m. on Monday the 4th of September, with bail set at $26,000. The investigation into the matter continues.